Data accumulation and regurgitation almost suggests that learning is an automated process that we can only monitor, not control. In truth, there are factors, limitations, and conditions that affect our ability to learn. Understanding these elements can help you avoid mistakes and accelerate your learning.
64,000 is the median number of words per book. Average person reads about 200 words per minute. Simple math will tell us that is one book in 320 minutes. To accomplish this in 7 days, numbers say you would have to read for 45 minutes a day. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification button, like, comment, and share. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Book of the Week series. Every week as I read another amazing title, I share it with the world. My name is Igor S.F. Walker. Today we look at super learning, advanced strategies for quicker comprehension, greater retention, and systematic expertise by Peter Hollins. So, how about you slow down and relax? Reduce all that noise for just a bit, make that choice, and decide to listen. In this video, we are reminded that we have never been taught how to learn, and that is a shame. This book is a key to reversing all the misconceptions you do have and make learning fun again. So stick around till the end. I will share with you some tools I have and use that will help you tremendously in this game of life. Discover a way to find out what actually motivates you, what innate human need is driving all of your decisions and your behavior. I will share some tools to improve your self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. If you can learn quickly, you can effectively walk the walk before anyone catches on that you were bluffing the entire time. You can discover opportunities you would never see if you were actually stuck, unable to understand something. And you generally have the ability to steer your life in whatever direction you want because of your ability to learn. It is your only barrier to entry. All mental activities, including learning, are influenced by internal and external factors and conditions. Some factors we can control, others we have to overcome or work around. One of the first conditions to learning that you must take into the account is your attention span. Studies have suggested that attention span of healthy adults is on average 15 minutes long. Now, other studies, Microsoft Corporation, for example, asserts that our immediate attention span, a single block of concentration, has fallen to an average of 8.25 seconds. That is less than that of a goldfish, which have been shown to be able to maintain focus for an entirety of 9 seconds. When we think about learning, we cannot help but think about attention and memory. Helen Dunn of Louisiana State University Center for Academic Success suggests between 30 and 50 minutes is the ideal length for learning new material. Anything less than 30 is just not enough. Anything more than 50 is too much information for your brain to take in at one time. After the completion of one session, you should take a 5 to 10 minute break before starting another session. In the 1950s, researchers William Demont and Nathaniel Kleitman found that the human body generally operates in 90-minute cycles. Whether asleep or awake, This pattern is called the ultradian rhythm. The start of each cycle is defined as an early period of arousal, ramping up to a mid-period of high performance, before finally decelerating into a period of stress. It is therefore a good idea to start a new learning routine by simply setting up a schedule. Researcher Roger Salio found in 1979 that we tend to view the act of learning in several ways, but it can generally be boiled down into two rough categories: surface learning and deep learning. Surface learning relates to gaining knowledge, facts, and memorization. Deep learning refers to abstracting meaning and understanding reality. The overwhelming majority of things that can be learned have some kind of a pattern, hidden or obvious. Now, these patterns typically are what you most care about in learning. Without these patterns, frankly, what you learn wouldn't be useful anyway. Only data that is meaningful and relevant to survival is sorted, retained, and understood. So start with the big ideas, the overarching concepts that actually link the little ideas together. So what is concept learning? It shows us how to categorize and discriminate items according to certain critical attributes. It entails pattern recall and integration of new examples and new ideas, and rather than being a mechanical technique of grinding memorization, concept learning is something that must be constructed and cultivated. In fact, certain kinds of education and ways of learning are so general and so transferable that you could be proficient in the skill when you have actually never encountered it before, simply because you know how to learn. You can learn the particulars of any task and perform it suitably a few times. But knowing the principles and ideas that actually link them together is a more effective way to retain those facts or those skills. When the time comes to learn something new, you may very well be able to frame that new knowledge with concepts you have already nailed down. 3 conditions, Kapoor said, make productive failure an effective process. Productive failure. Choose problems that challenge but do not frustrate. Give learners a chance to explain and elaborate their own process. Finally, allow learners to compare and to contrast good and bad solutions. Productive failure as an effective process. Struggling with something is a definite condition that leads to learning, though it requires discipline and it requires a sense of delayed gratification. So at the beginning of a project that does seem unfamiliar, we need to tell our brain that we are in a learning mode. We need to establish that one of our main takeaways will actually be new knowledge, not just an immediately successful outcome. Reframe your expectations to make the learning as important as the result, more important if possible. Document your process the way a chef would write down the steps of a recipe, or a detective would remark upon evidence in a new investigation. Use your failures to plan next steps. If you documented your process and then diagnosed when something went wrong, then turn those evaluations into plans, a part of your project. Anticipating frustration in advance is just good planning, but you also have to plan how to deal with it. Accelerating learning means working with the pre-existing inbuilt mechanisms we already possess when we work with rather than against the brain. We can get the most from our learning experiences and enjoy learning more. Memorization is how we store and how we retrieve information for use. Essentially the process of learning. And there are 3 steps to creating memory. An error in any of these steps will actually result in knowledge that is not effectively converted to memory. Encoding, storage, retrieval. Those are the steps. There are essentially 3 memory systems: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Most of the learning process isn't necessarily focused on retrieval. It is concentrated on the storage aspect. And what you can do to force information from sensory and short-term areas into long-term ones. But not only are we fighting weak encoding or storage in our quest for learning, we're also fighting the brain's natural tendency to forget as soon as possible. This is encapsulated by the forgetting curve, concept pioneered by psychologists Hermann Ebbinghaus. Ebbinghaus found patterns for memory loss and isolated 2 simple factors that affected the forgetting curve. First, the rate of decay was significantly blunted if the memory was strong and powerful and had personal significance to the person remembering. Second, the amount of time and how old a memory was determined how quickly and how severely it decayed. This suggests that there is little we can do about forgetting other than to come up with tactics to assign personal significance to information and also rehearse more often, but with a structured, flowing study cycle. We know where we stand, and we can apply the steps to any coursework we actually like. The steps are preview, attend, review, study, and assess. And then the cycle is repeated. Our memories are fickle, and they like to play tricks on us by design, but they actually can be molded to our advantage in learning more quickly. Spaced repetition is directly aimed at dealing with actually beating forgettings. This spaced repetition, otherwise known as distributed practice, is just what it sounds like. The reason why it is such an important technique in improving your memory is that it battles forgetting directly, and it allows you to work within the bounds of your brain's capabilities. Other techniques, no less important, are about increasing encoding or storage. Remember the 3 parts of memory: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Spaced repetition helps the last part, retrieval. When you set out to learn something, instead of measuring the number of hours you have spent on something, try instead to measure the number of times you revisited the same information after the initial learning. Make it your goal to increase the frequency of reviewing, not necessarily the duration. Now, both matter. But the literature on spaced repetition or distributed practice makes it clear that breathing room is actually necessary when you spread out your learning and your memorizing over a long period of time and revisit the same material frequently. You are simply better off. Dunlosky's team deemed as the best for learning and retention the following things: practice testing, otherwise known as retrieval practice, is when you're looking at a blank piece of paper and you are promoted to generate information without any further cues. Distributed practice, otherwise known as spaced repetition. Elaborative interrogation. If you cannot easily explain an idea to a 5-year-old, then you don't truly understand the concept. It is the act of making a thorough explanation for why a certain fact is the case. Self-explanation is a related technique. Also, it depends on the most available resource you do have, the things you already know. Self-explanation uses prior knowledge to explain and to understand new knowledge. And finally, interleaved practice mixes the practice of several related skills throughout the study session. Now, a study was simple. Students asked to learn a passage in order to complete a test later on, performed worse. Then students asked to learn the same passage specifically with the intention of teaching it to someone else. A simple way to bootstrap new knowledge using old knowledge is to make analogies. Feynman technique, named for a famous physicist Richard Feynman, is a specific application of self-explanation. Step 1, choose your concept. Step 2, write down an explanation of the concept in plain English. Step 3, find your blind spots. Step 4, use an analogy. Techniques that actually focus on active and conscious engagement with the new material will always result in deeper understanding and better recall. Interleaved practice goes against conventional wisdom, and it encourages you to alternate between different topics or skills in a single study session. Now, given the proper motivation, one can make it so learning and acquiring knowledge isn't a chore. It is rather, it's a rung on a ladder to your overall goal and a sense of gratification. It's simply not as painful when you're chasing something greater versus learning for the sake of learning, or even worse, being forced to learn. Again, you see the distinction between depth learning. You have to have a why and not just a how. So make learning the journey, not the end point. Inspiration, excitement, and energy are great when you do have them, but those require you to be in a positive state of mind, which isn't always possible. Through solving a problem or reaching for a goal, learning actually was made inevitable. Problem-based learning, PBL, is where you start with the problem that needs to be solved and you force learning through the process of solving the problem. You try to accomplish a goal that necessitates learning. Instead of setting out to learn X, the idea is to set a goal of solving problem Y, and in the process, learning X. Of course, this is pure learning transfer. One surefire way to enhance your learning is to act in such a way that it doesn't feel like you're learning at all. When you make learning secondary, i.e., you make your gains in skill, your gains in understanding a side effect of some other task, you can't help but get carried away with, you actually learn more quickly and more easily. We can be motivated by explanation. Why does XYZ happen? We can be motivated by interpretation. How can this data be changed from X into form Y? We can be motivated by application. What can I actually do with this knowledge? Perspective. What other way I can look at this? We can be motivated by empathy. How is that other person looking at this? And finally, we can be motivated by self-knowledge. Who am I? These can be different motivations. A study by Julia Galli in the journal Frontiers of Psychiatry explains why, when it comes to memory and data retrieval, the brain favors semantic operation over shallow operation, which simply means that we recall information better and understand it more when it actually has meaning attached to it. Neuroscientists have researched the way that new data is encoded into the brain. When you try to store random neutral data on its structure and on its features alone, for example, trying to memorize a random string of letters, the memory isn't encoded as deeply as when you process it in a more meaningful way. Just as we take on better habits to learn more effectively, we can work to dismantle bad habits that undermine our learning. Whoa! Our attitudes and our perspectives can actually play an enormous role in how well we learn and how resilient we are to challenges and to adversities. A fixed mindset is one in which we think knowledge and skill are inborn and they cannot be learned, whereas a growth mindset sees development as possible and achieved through effort and through focus. All learning is trial and error. And what works for one person in one context might not work for another person in another context. It is all about consciously observing, adjusting, and appraising your own process as you go, and empowering yourself to make incremental improvements. And there you have it, super learning. Now please do help out. It is easy. Simply like this video so more people can enjoy it. Share it too and spread the word. Do leave a comment and share your thoughts. Subscribe to my channel. Stay up to date. And the link to this book is in the description below. So buy it, read, and never stop learning, especially learning about yourself and nature. So gift yourself by taking the free human needs test on my website and find out what actually motivates you. What innate human need is driving all of your decisions and your behavior. And if you feel you are ready to improve your self-awareness, your social awareness, your self-management, and your relationship management even further, do check out my Master of Life Awareness program. The links are in the description below. Thank you. Love and respect.